Hi, Harry Dent here. I just have to comment on the tax reform bill just passed by the Republicans. You know, stated to be the greatest thing they've ever done, the first big legislation in the Trump administration, and greater than ever compared to even the Reagan tax cuts. This is not the same thing. Every season of the economy, spring boom, summer inflationary recession, fall bubble boom season, and then winter, which we are now in since 2008, and only quantitative easing has kept the deflation at bay, which is not good policy. It will backfire. And now we have these tax cuts, which is more something for nothing economics. We're just getting free lunch after, 4% mortgages, 2% car loans, stock prices going up the roof with the lowest interest rates, with companies buying back their own stocks. The biggest factor in the stock market is companies, large companies, buying back their own stocks with low-cost money via the Fed. This is not a real recovery. This is not a real solution. Our debt is higher than ever. Public, at 21 trillion and growing, and private at 60-some trillion and growing. This is not the solution. We don't need to invest in more capacity. Companies are operating at 75% of capacity. 85% is normal. 90% is optimal. So companies are not going to invest this savings from corporate tax cuts in, additional capacity and creating new jobs. They've only used the money they've gotten for free to buy their own stocks back. So this is not the solution at this time. When Reagan came in the early 1980s, we had seen the greatest inflationary period in modern history. Inflation screams supply crisis. We don't have enough. Technologies are not productive. Wages are not going up versus inflation and stuff. That's when you need tax cuts and deregulation and things as Reagan did at the right time in the cycle from the early 80s forward. This is the opposite. We're in a period of overexpansion from the great bubble boom from 1983 to 2008. And now they're saying, oh, yeah, corporations, which again have the highest profits compared to GDP in history, oh, they need a tax cut. And 19% to 26% by different polls show that the public doesn't buy this. They don't think this is going to benefit the middle class as proposed, because they got some token benefits, but the middle class and the lower middle class in our society don't pay much taxes in the first place. So any tax cut, especially one that benefits businesses and larger corporations by cutting the corporate rate from 35% to 21%, is not going to benefit the everyday person as much as the rich. And the rich are already getting richer faster than ever in history, except for the roaring 20s boom. And so this is not the right policy from my point of view. What we have to understand is that all this stimulus at 2% real growth in the economy on average has only reemployed the people that were laid off in the Great Recession in 2008, 2009 forward. Now we're at full employment, 4% unemployment, which is about as low as it ever gets. And our workforce growth, because again, we understand demographics, which most economists don't, it's like near zero for the next decade, actually slightly negative, and 0.2% for decades to follow at best. So how are you going to grow the economy at 4% when workforce growth is near zero? Productivity, because of the aging of the baby boom, is now down to 0.5%. It used to be 2, 3, 4% in the good old days. Aging people are not more productive. We project that's going to go down to 0 in the coming years as baby boomers continue to retire. And remember, they first retire, then they die. This is not good for demographics or the economy or productivity. So this promise, from Trump and the Republicans that, if we just cut taxes, we're going to go back to 3 to 4% growth. Yeah, this even seems plausible because now GDP growth in 2017 has come closer to 3% after years and years of 2% on average. This is also an illusion because we've seen a boom, a short-term boom, 2016-17, from the declining Generation X generation that caused our decline from 2008 and will continue to spend less into 2002. But they did have a short-term surge in demographics from 2016 to 2017. So I think this is about as good as we're going to see here. Everybody's going to think, oh my God, the economy is going to go to 3 to 4%. It already looks like 3%. This is short-lived. In Japan, the same thing has happened with Abe and his stimulus policies. He did this starting in early 2013 with massive quantitative easing, 3 times the rate of Europe and the US at our best stimulus rates. And people are saying, oh, Abe saved the economy. No, they had their millennial boom, which is not giant, but very substantial from 2014 to 2020 on their spending wave. And I think demographics is causing this revival in Japan and in the US. And in the US, it's more short-lived. It should start to decline in 2018. And Japan will start to decline after 2020. And if we're right about the worldwide economy going down in the next few years, Japan's going to suffer from that as well. So this is temporary. You don't get something for nothing. It's that simple. So endless low-cost loans and free money and stock buybacks, mergers and acquisitions don't increase the pie. They just rearrange it for the profits of companies and the top 1% and 0.1%, which are getting the greatest gains, which is also a bad trend. Every time that the top 0.1% to 1% has garnered this much wealth has led to a downturn, a bubble crash, and a depression. Debt creates leverage in the economy. That creates leverage in financial assets, from real estate to stocks to commodities and everything else. And then they finally crash. So the Bitcoin thing, which to me is my favorite topic today because it's just so extreme. Everybody's like, oh, I wish I'd have bought Bitcoin at 1,000 or 2,000, or a friend of mine down here, Michael Turpin, started buying it at 1/10 of a cent. Why didn't we buy this? It's the greatest bubble in all of history. It is a late stage bubble, like the internet bubble in the late stages of the massive tech bubble from late 94 to early 2000. It is not the bubble because it's only 600 billion, give or take, in market cap for all these coins. Bitcoin is the biggest part of that, and Ethereum next. But it's not the bubble, it's the pin. This is one of the things that could burst this broader stock market bubble if Bitcoin crashes as much as the internet bubble did in less than a year, like 93, 95, 96%, which is what I expect in the next year or so. That will be the pin that causes investors to question, oh, what about stocks? What about real estate? What about commodities, gold, everything else? So I think that we are getting close to a major crash. I've been looking for this for a long time, and I admit it's gone longer than I expected with all of this government stimulus, $12 trillion of money printing and still going up, especially in Japan and Europe. But this is a sign that we're near the end. This Bitcoin bubble which is the beginning of a new wave of technologies, blockchain, which are very promising and are a great addition to the internet bubble before it. But the Bitcoin bubble and cryptocurrency bubble is not as large. It's like 600, 700 billion versus 2.9 trillion in the internet bubble index in the late 90s, again, which happened in a year or a little more, and then it crashed. So this is a time to be cautious. Tracking Bitcoin is very important because when that starts to crash, we saw 40% just last week, but I mean, in a bubble like this, 40% means nothing when you've gone up 20 times in the last year or so. If it crashes more, like 50, 60, 70% in the near future, then it's a sign that this cryptocurrency bubble's over and the stock bubble is over. And this may be the pin that pricks the bubble.